Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Martial Universe Season 6 based on novel. So let's start. The sound of wind parting resounded over the serene blue sky. Three figures rushed past with lightning-like speed and a low and deep wind pressure on the sea of trees below, forming three shallow scars on it. Looking from a distance, it appeared as though it was a green-colored gully. These three figures were naturally Lin Dong trio, who had left the ancient hall, and were hurrying towards the core area of the ancient battlefield. The size of the ancient battlefield was extremely vast. The northwestern region where Lin Dong's group was located, was merely a tiny portion of it. Of course, with such a vast amount of space, it was likely extremely difficult for one to roam the entire area within a short 1 year. Lin Dong's journey to the center of the ancient battlefield was clearly not something that could be accomplished within a short 2 to 3 days. Therefore, they needed to make full use of the time. There is a Wanxiang city located along the route from the northwestern region to the center of the ancient battlefield. That is one of the few cities in the ancient battlefield that one must pass through to reach the central area. Various experts from all over the ancient battlefield are gathered there. At that place, experts who had advanced into the nirvana stage are common, and it could be said to have many hidden experts. Of course, it is also a place that we must pass when entering the central region. Lin Dong's eyes swept slightly around him while they were traveling. Immediately, he turned his head and uttered those words to the other two with a smile. Little Flame scratched his head and smiled in a silly manner. Some fiery heat surged within his eyes. This fellow was addicted to fighting deep within his bones. Being able to fight with those experts was quite an enjoyable event in his opinion. Little Martin did not comment much when he heard this. His eyes swept over the space around them. For some unknown reason, his eyebrows were knitted slightly together. Little Flame, what kind of inheritance did you obtain from the White Tiger Hall? Lin Dong did not notice Little Martin's expression. Instead, he glanced at Little Flame before asking with some curiosity. A martial arts of unknown depth known as the White Tiger Star Scale Mirror, Little Flame laughed. White Tiger Star Scale Mirror. Lin Dong nodded slightly. It was likely that a remnant shadow like Qing Ji did not appear within the White Tiger Hall. However, this was only normal. An old demon of abnormal level like Qing Ji. It was already very incredible to even have one here. If the other three halls had existences that were similar to him, the strength of the Qiangang alliance would likely be a little too terrifying. After a brief inquiry about Little Flame's experience in the White Tiger Hall, Lin Dong did not continue his questioning. His eyes were rotated before someone finally noticed Little Martin's expression. He was immediately startled as he softly asked, "Little Martin, what is it?" Little Flame also looked at Little Martin. Upon seeing the latter's narrowed eyes forming a somewhat dangerous arc, his demonic beast unique instincts also caused it to understand something. His forward-charging body suddenly stopped, and a dark black metal rod appeared in his hand. His large body directly blocked in front of Lin Dong. Lin Dong's eyebrows were slowly knitted. Powerful mental energy swiftly spread apart. However, his deep probing did not register any response. This did not allow him to heave a sigh of relief, but instead caused his expression to gradually turn solemn. The purple-black glow in Little Martin's eyes flickered, and that handsome evil-looking face had appeared a little deeper. In a low voice, he coldly laughed, "We seem to have been targeted by someone." Upon hearing this, Lin Dong's eyes shrunk immediately. He did not sense anything unusual throughout the journey. What did this mean? It meant that the person who had targeted them was so powerful that even they could not sense him. That kind of ability was not something that an ordinary person could achieve. Can we find him? Lin Dong softly uttered. A cold glint vaguely flowed in his eyes. He did not expect that they would be immediately targeted by others the moment they left the ancient hall. This matter caused him to feel a little upset. Little Martin smiled and nodded. After which, he suddenly grabbed in front of him and a purple-black light glow rushed out from his palm in a lightning-like manner. After which, it transformed into a purple-black light net that suddenly covered the entire empty space. Sizzle sizzle. The purple-black light net appeared to possess a powerful corrosive strength. Even the invisible air emitted waves of white smoke when the net appeared, causing one's heart to pound wildly upon sight. The purple-black light net covered the empty space under the focus of Lin Dong's group. However, the moment that the net was about to be withdrawn, that empty space finally began to become distorted in front of the eyes of Lin Dong's group. A surprised "her" was emitted. Immediately, a bright strong glow was suddenly erupted and actually repelled the purple-black net by force. Two somewhat strange figures surfaced from nowhere after the light net was repelled. The two figures were wrapped within a black shadow, causing one to be unable to discern their appearance. However, Lin Dong's expression changed drastically upon his first glance at these two mysterious figures. This was because these two were surprisingly the two mysterious people whom he had seen within the Nirvana burning sky array in the ancient treasure trove. We were actually discovered by them. Lin Dong's eyes gradually become grave. He became cautious, appearing as though he was faced with a great enemy. He clearly understood that despite having already raised his strength to that of the 3-yuan Nirvana stage, he was still able to sense a dangerous feeling from the bodies of these two mysterious experts. Although this kind of danger was much weaker compared to when he had first seen them, these two people were clearly not people whom Zhu Huqian's group could compare with. It is really surprising. You can actually discover our presence. The two black shadows were suspended in the sky. Two pairs of cold eyes were staring at Lin Dong's group under the black glow as they spoke sinisterly. May I know what great being the two of you are? What are you planning to do by following behind us? The surprise in Lin Dong's eyes were withdrawn as he spoke with a calm manner. Brat, why are you still acting foolish in front of us? We have met before in the Nirvana burning sky array. A black figure let out a soft cold laughter. Although we did not see your appearance back then, we can still clearly remember your aura. Seeing that you have fled so quickly back then, it is likely that you have overheard something, right? Another black shadow laughed in a dense manner. Lin Dong's eyes became chilly. He was not certain what exactly these people wanted to do. However, it was likely that it involved quite a great conspiracy. These two fellows had been guarding at the ancient hall after Lin Dong met them back then. It was likely that they were waiting for him to reappear. You two ghost-like beings of unknown origin. We are not the least bit interested in your issues. The both of you should also not pester us. Let's not meddle in each other's affairs. If you get overboard, don't think that Grandpa Martin does not have some tactics to deal with you. Little Martin's handsome face revealed a chillness as he said. Little Flame did not utter a single word. His large body stepped forward. His face, which originally carried a simple and honest look, had turned incomparably fierce at this moment. A fierceness rose from all over his body, causing him to transform into a demon-like being in the blink of an eye. What arrogant words. Even those super empire's bosses don't dare to say such words to me. Who do you think you are? A black figure suddenly laughed. His tone was filled with ridicule. Do you really think that you are considered amongst the top within this ancient battlefield, just because you have defeated two members from a super empire? The other black shadow also laughed eerily. Little Martin narrowed both of his eyes slightly, but he was not angry. A strange smile was lifted on his handsome face. In the next instant, his body abruptly shot forward and an afterimage strangely appeared. Swoosh! Little Martin's speed was lightning-like. In the blink of an eye, he had already appeared below the two figures in a ghost-like fashion. Monstrous purple-black energy surged out, and actually transformed into blade-like wings. A shocking cold glint flashed past the tip of those wings. The expressions of the two black shadows changed the moment that purple-black wings appeared. Even they could sense a dense bone-chilling cold from them. Immediately, he waved his hand and a golden glow surged out from within his body, forming a gold-colored shield in front of them. Clang! The blade-like wings ruthlessly hacked onto the gold-colored shields. Sparks erupted and the gold-colored shield was immediately covered by crack lines. The two black shadows also took the opportunity to pull back. Those eyes under the black shadows scintillated slightly. Bang! However, just when the two figures were pulling back, a shocking wind came sweeping over from the space above. A large black-colored rod hacked downwards while carrying a terrifying strength that could blast apart a mountain. Humph! The continuous attack had clearly caused these two mysterious figures to become a little furious. One of them clenched his hand and a bright gold glow agglomerated in his hand. It actually transformed into an enormous gold-colored large hammer. The hammer danced and ruthlessly smashed on the black-colored large rod. Bang! Wild and violent storm rippled and swept apart. The black-colored rod was actually forced back by it. Little Martin's feet made a couple of rapid steps before stabilizing his body. The fierceness and ruthlessness on his face became increasingly intense. Golden body agglomerating objects. Lin Dong's expression also became increasingly grave, as he watched the gold shield and gold axe that these two mysterious people had randomly formed. This was a real energy substance that was formed from using the energy of the golden body. However, this kind of energy was something that only those experts, who had stepped into the 4-yuan nirvana stage, could barely control. You two are a little too inexperienced to play this tactic in front of Grandpa Martin. Little Martin's handsome face was unusually icy cold. He widened his mouth and purple-black glow swept out from all directions. Finally, it appeared to have transformed into an enormous dark mouth that seemed to be able to swallow the world. This mouth bit towards the two black shadows in a lightning-like manner. Lin Dong sensed a kind of energy that was somewhat similar to the devouring ancestral symbol from within that large dark mouth. However, it was not as pure as that of the devouring ancestral symbol. Instead, it was mixed with some other things. Heaven-swallowing demonic light. A dense and cold cry was suddenly emitted from Little Martin's mouth. That purple-black glow had also surged out from within the black light in all directions at this moment. Daytime turned into darkness. Its momentum was extremely shocking. Little Martin had finally begun to unleash the terrifying strength that belonged to him after regaining his physical body. The monstrous black light was just like a black curtain that spread over the day sky with lightning-like speed. Even the sunlight that scattered from the sky had vanished. The two black figures looked at this black light that was swiftly spreading from the top of their heads, before their eyes suddenly turned stern and solemn. It was likely that they had sensed the strange strength contained within the black light. This fellow is a little unusual. The two of them exchanged glances, and saw the meaning contained in the other's eyes. They had discovered Lin Dong's group back at the ancient hall, and had similarly seen Lin Dong's and Little Flame's powerful strength when they defeated Zhu Tianhua's group. However, that was not enough to surprise them. It was due to this that they decided to follow Lin Dong's group, preparing to find a chance to kill this fellow who might have had unearthed their conspiracy. However, no matter how they thought, they would never have expected that the seemingly youngest Little Martin was the one who hid himself the deepest. The development of this matter seemed to have spun out of their control. The black light spreading throughout the sky caused the two black figures to sense a trace of danger from within it. Due to their overly cautious mentality, they did not dare to be careless. Immediately, the bright golden light surged out like floodwaters, before finally transforming into a gold-colored large light figure. Devil-crushing golden spirit. The gold-colored light figure stood within the monstrous black light. A golden ray of light spread and blocked the erosion of the black glow, attracting the attention of everyone as it did so. Lin Dong's eyes were a little grave as he watched this scene. The two black figures were extremely strong. If it was not because of the fact that little Martin had currently recovered his physical body and some of his strength, it was likely that both he and Little Flame would end up with quite an intense battle. Boom boom. The bright golden light was emitted from the large gold-colored figure like a volcano. It carried waves of extremely powerful energy, as it eroded away the strange purple-black light that entered from every opening. Humph! The purple-black glow in Little Martin's eyes became increasingly dense upon seeing the stubbornness of the two. He extended his long hand and suddenly clenched it tightly. Break! The purple-black light wiggled strangely when Little Martin's cry sounded. It actually transformed into numerous large purple-black chains that shot out and directly entwined firmly around the large golden figure. After which, it shrunk ruthlessly. Crack! A clear sound appeared and the incomparably tough large golden figure immediately began to crumble. Numerous crack lines were formed while even the golden glow on it had become dim. However, this was not considered swallowing but a kind of erosion. Little Martin's energy possessed some eroding properties, and had quite a great offensive strength. However, it was impossible to achieve the effect of the devouring power, which took the strength of others for oneself. Shocked flashed across the eyes of the two black shadows, when they saw the line pattern on the large golden figure. A ruthlessness quickly surged as the seals formed by their hands changed. Explode. Bang. The large golden figure suddenly swelled when the seals were formed. An extremely wild and violent energy storm swept from behind. Finally, a bang was emitted and it was actually forcefully exploded. The wild and violent attack that was formed because of the explosion also scattered half of the spreading black light. Those two figures also took the opportunity to rush out, escaping from the reach of the spreading black light. Seeing that these two fellows had escaped from his attack range, Little Martin did not continue to attack. He waved his hand and those black light was swiftly withdrawn. Finally, it entered into Little Martin's body. Who are you exactly? After this exchange, the two black shadows clearly did not dare to underestimate this seemingly ladylike, beautiful young man in front of them. Their sinister voice had an additional trace of surprise. Let me warn you, do not intervene in this matter. The things that are involved behind are far from what you can bear. The other black shadow also coldly cried out. TCCH. Little Martin curled his mouth and laughed coldly. What has Grandpa Martin not experienced? Do you think that you are qualified to threaten me? You? Those two mysterious black shadows were clearly extremely agitated by Little Martin. Immediately, they spoke in a dense manner. You are indeed quite skilled, but don't think that we don't have the ability to deal with you. You cowardly mice dare to act arrogantly in this ancient battlefield that is controlled by the Eastern Xian region. Little Martin mockingly looked at the two. The expressions of those two black figures immediately changed drastically upon hearing this. Their voices had turned unusually deep with shock at this moment. Just what do you know? Grandpa Martin knows all that needs to be known. I have said before that we are not interested in whatever plan that you have. However, if you wish to secretly conspire against us, Grandpa Martin can only display a killing blow and kill you people who have sneaked into this domain. Little Martin smiled at the two of them. His handsome face that was present in the eyes of those two black shadows caused the latter to feel a chill surging within their hearts. Lin Dong and Little Flame appeared beside Little Martin. Their eyes were cautious as they watched the two mysterious people in front. The fragments of the conversation that he could vaguely hear allowed Lin Dong to guess that these fellows, who had sneaked into the ancient battlefield, definitely had some extremely grand plans. The people involved were definitely not simple individuals. In this game between powerful shadowy individuals, Lin Dong did not wish to be part of it. Currently, all that he wanted to do was to pass the 100 Empire War and find a super sect to use as a stepping stone, so that he could advance into an even higher level. Those hidden eyes of the two black shadows floating in the sky flickered. There was a vague killing intent, as well as fear lingering within them. Clearly, they were still unwilling to abandon their intention to kill Lin Dong's group. However, Little Martin's intervention had thrown a spanner in their works, causing them to be extra wary. Little Martin crossed his hands over his chest and lazily stared at these two black shadows. The strength of these two were quite great. If he did not use the celestial demon Martin's actual body, it was likely that there would be some difficulty killing them. However, if he was to do that, it would inevitably attract the attention of the experts, who were paying close attention to this space. At that time, he might even bring about a great deal of trouble to Lin Dong. Hence, forcing these two to withdraw was the best result. Lin Dong was clearly aware of Little Martin's intention. Therefore, he did not say anything else. These two black shadows were quite strong, but it was impossible to cause his group to be afraid. However, it was obviously that they were not the only ones involved in this grand and revolutionary plan. Lin Dong did not intend to touch this quagmire. The atmosphere in the mid-air stiffened. It was a long while later before the glint in the eyes of these two black shadows flickered slightly. A deep and solemn voice was slowly emitted. "Since you insist on not intervening, the two of us shall give you respect. However, I hope that you remember your promise. Do not randomly interfere in this matter. The water is too deep, and regardless of what kind of ability you have, you will be drowned in it." Little Martin shrugged his shoulders and remained non-committal. "Hopefully we will not hear of any other rumors. If the news here is to leak, there will naturally be someone who will find trouble with you. At that time, the situation might not be as easily resolved as it is now." The two black shadows glanced sinisterly at Lin Dong's group. Finally, they clearly understood that it was pointless to say anything more. They immediately ceased to speak as they turned around, transformed into two black rays of light that swiftly shot out. Within a couple of breaths' time, they had already disappeared into the horizon. Little Martin only lazily withdrew his eyes after seeing that the black shadows had disappeared into the distance. He curled his lips and said, "What a hateful grasshopper. If it is not because I do not wish to expose my identity, I would have directly slammed them to death." Lin Dong grinned. He also withdrew his eyes that were looking into the distance and softly said, "It looks like the matter regarding this ancient battlefield really has a wide implication. This place is the territory of the Eastern Xian region. Moreover, it is a place where quite a number of super sects were selecting disciples. Yet these fellows actually dare to intervene. I really wonder just what kind of great monster is backing them. It is likely that these fellows will not let the matter rest so easily." Little Flame, who had been quiet at the side, suddenly remarked. Lin Dong nodded. This time around, they had relied on Little Martin's strength to cause the other party's offensive plan to fail. However, with this experience, the other party would no longer make this mistake again in the future. There is also no need to be overly worried. This ancient battlefield is after all the territory of those super sects from the Eastern Xian region. Those people will not dare to be overly flagrant. Otherwise, they might end up prompting those experts from those super sects to appear. Their plans would likely end up in smoke at that time. Little Martin laughed. Yeah. Lin Dong nodded once again. He said, I am not interested in what those great beings want to do. It is fine as long as they do not interrupt my advancement. Otherwise, I won't care who they are. Let's go, we must hurry to the Wanxiang city next. That place is one that we must pass in order to head to the central area. It can be considered to be a truly chaotic one where many hidden experts lie. Be extra wary once we reach there. Lin Dong turned his eyes and looked towards a certain direction. After which, he waved his hand and took the lead to rush forward. Little Martin and Little Flame swiftly followed behind. Two black shadows flashed and appeared from a distant mountain peak, after Lin Dong's group left. How should we deal with this? A black shadow glanced at his companion and spoke with a cold voice. We must not let any word leak. Otherwise, none of us will escape. The person following beside that brat is quite skilled. I guess that even if the both of us were to join forces, it will still be difficult to finish him off. Looks like we must summon the Death Spirit General, the other person mused for a moment before replying in a densely cold voice. Oh? Do we actually need to ask that perverted guy? Is that fellow really so strong? The earlier black shadow was immediately startled as he softly asked. There will not be any trouble if we are prepared. Ultimately, it will be beneficial for us. We must eliminate those three people no matter what. That black shadow sinisterly uttered. His voice that was filled with killing intent lingered over the top of the mountain. Even the air itself had become icy cold. Those three fellows are in for a bad time. As nightfall came falling from the sky, a dark and gloomy color covered the heaven and earth. Under the influence of the darkness, the yuan power between the heaven and earth turned violent at the same time. On a mountain range that was within a short distance from the Wanxiang city, there was a bonfire ongoing. Three figures were seated silently beside the bonfire. Even though continuous howls of demonic beasts could be heard throughout the night, their faces remained serene, and did not reveal even the slightest bit of nervousness. The three figures belonged to the Lin Dong trio, who had been traveling unrelentingly from the northwest region in a hurry to the Wanxiang city. As the distance between the northwest region and the Wanxiang city was very long, even if the Lin Dong trio maximized their speeds, they still required nearly 5 days to reach this place. At our current rate, we can reach the Wanxiang city tomorrow, Lin Dong smiled while stretching his back beside the bonfire. Little Flame nodded his head. Little Martin's face remained laser-looking. He raised his eyes and took a sweeping glance at the surrounding darkness and said, This time around, I can't sense anyone following us. It appears that two fellows have retreated. Reportedly, there are members of the super sects standing guard in the Wanxiang city. I guess those fellows of unknown origin do not dare to get near to us. Lin Dong laughed plainly. Little Martin nodded his head while leaning against a huge tree. At this point of the night, the yuan power between the heaven and earth was getting rather rampant. The earth began to tremble and frantic howls of demonic beasts rushed forth the sky. Indistinctly, one could see the notorious demonic hordes scrambling over the mountain range. However, no matter how enormous the demonic horde was, there was not a single demonic beast within 100 feet of the Lin Dong trio. Even the demonic hordes that were surging through mountain range seemed to avoid their location intentionally. It appeared as though there was something they feared in this area. With the both of you here, it's more than enough to induce fear in those demonic hordes. Lin Dong could not help but chuckle when he saw this scene. Little Flame possessed the bloodline of the heavenly devil tiger tribe, while Little Martin had already regained the physical body of a celestial demon martin. Such unique display of might was enough to keep those demonic hordes away. During the past 5 days of hasty journey, they practically did not meet any obstruction, and were even relaxed. It has been quite a while since they last enjoyed such a carefree sensation, after entering the ancient battlefield. Right now, beside Lin Dong, Little Flame was starting to become increasingly outstanding, while Little Martin had regained his physical body and his powers were recovering steadily. Both of them were powerful enough to take care of themselves. Therefore, Lin Dong no longer need to go through great pains and carefully strategize on how to handle various powerful enemies of his own. What kind of demonic hordes are these? If you can enter the demon city, you will see what the genuine surging demonic hordes are all about. Little Martin curled his lips and said. Demon city, huh? If there's an opportunity in the future, I definitely want to go there and experience it, Lin Dong chuckled. He was rather curious about that mystical and unfamiliar region. It's not an easy task to enter the demon city. Separating the eastern Xian region and the demon city is a chaos demonic sea, which is so huge that one will not be able to fly over. Even when I am at my peak, I need to remain highly cautious when I cross the sea, Little Martin explained. Chaos demonic sea. Lin Dong muttered. For some reasons, he found it somewhat familiar. On the map that you obtained in the Yang City Symbol Master Tower, there was a location of the second piece of ancestral symbol being marked on it. That is where the Chaos Demonic Sea is located at, Little Martin continued. At this moment, Lin Dong suddenly understood something and smacked his lips involuntarily. The second ancestral symbol. There were 8 ancestral symbols in total. He did not know what type of ancestral symbol was that particular piece. It had been quite long since the day Lin Dong obtained the devouring ancestral symbol. Without possessing the powers of the devouring ancestral symbol, it would be very hard for Lin Dong to achieve his current status within 1 or 2 years. Thus, he developed a strong interest in this kind of godly artifacts like the ancestral symbols. Among the 8 ancestral symbols, other than the devouring ancestral symbol that you have, I have also seen a guy who possessed the blazing ancestral symbol. Phew, that guy is an exceptional and ruthless individual. He is able to evaporate an entire river with a flip of his palm. During those days, I have been taken advantage of by him numerous times. That guy was a top-ranking entity in this heaven and earth. You might have the chance to meet him in the future, Little Martin reminisced. Blazing ancestral symbol, a look of novelty flashed across his eyes. Clearly, he was rather curious about it. How powerful would that kind of ancestral symbol be? There's no need for you to envy him. The devouring ancestral symbol is the most mysterious symbol out of the 8 ancestral symbol. Naturally, there's something powerful about it. It's just that your capabilities haven't reached that level yet. Therefore, you are unable to fully unleash its potential, Little Martin explained lazily. Lin Dong nodded his head slightly. Even though he was curious about the ability of the blazing ancestral symbol, he was not drooling or lusting over it. He knew the principle of not biting off more than what he could chew. Currently, he could not even fully control the devouring ancestral symbol. If he was lucky enough to obtain another piece of ancestral symbol again, it would be hard for him to master it as well. During that time, he might hurt himself instead. Upon seeing Lin Dong expressing understanding towards this matter, Little Martin did not speak anymore. Then, he put his fingers into the bonfire and played with a wisp of fire boringly. After a moment, his fingers suddenly trembled and his eyebrows folded slightly. At the same time, Lin Dong and Little Martin sensed something as well. They raised their heads and looked into the darkness of the jungle ahead of them. There seemed to be a sound of urgent footsteps coming through the darkness. Lin Dong's and Little Martin's facial expressions did not have much changes. Little Flame's hands slowly slided down and grabbed the black-colored metal pole beside him. The bonfire was surging. After a short while, Three figures walked out of the darkness. The first one was a wild-looking male, whose body was rather muscular. Following behind him were two girls. One of the girls was wearing red clothes. Her slender and seductive body possessed an arousing curve in the darkness, and her face was extremely beautiful as well. Even though she could not be compared to Mu Hongling, she was still considered as a fine beauty. Behind this girl, there was a teenage girl who was dressed in green. Her face was rather exquisite. Within her big and jet-black eyes, there was a lack of maturity and experience that Lin Dong was familiar with. Instead, her eyes seemed to contain a tinge of timidity. Lin Dong shot a glance at the three persons. His gaze stopped at the green-clothed teenage girl for a while. Then, his eyes drooped slightly and he did not express much interest in them. My three friends, our path has been blocked by a demonic horde. We chose to retreat to this place as we saw a bonfire here. May we take a short break here? The wild-looking man cupped his fist in courtesy and asked after scanning the Lin Dong trio carefully. No, you may not, little Martin replied coldly as he raised his eyes. He sensed something troublesome about these three persons. You? Upon seeing little Martin's rudeness, the red-dressed girl's eyebrows flared slightly. Just as she was about to say something, she was being stopped by the man hastily. The man appeared wild-looking, but he was extremely meticulous in his actions. In this dark night, the whole mountain range was filled with demonic hordes, and yet, this place was oddly empty. Even those demonic hordes did not dare to get closer to this place. Even though he was not sure of the exact reason, he did not dare to slight these three extremely young-looking men. Since this friend does not want to be bothered, we will leave this place. The man gritted his teeth slightly. He was rather decisive as he turned and prepared to leave. Beside the man, the green-dressed teenage girl bit her lips lightly, and with a tinge of fear in her big black eyes, she looked at the Lin Dong trio and asked shyly, "Three big brothers, we will not disturb you. We will only be resting beside you for a while. Once the demonic horde leaves, we will leave as well. If you are not satisfied, we can offer you some nirvana pills as remuneration." "Fine, give us 2 million nirvana pills," little Martin replied indifferently. Upon hearing these words, that green-dressed teenage girl's face flushed with embarrassment, and her big eyes became teary unexpectedly. Even little Martin was surprised at this sight. Those who made it to the ancient battlefield were considered the best in their respective empires. This small girl's behavior stunned him. "My brother is merely joking. The three of you come and have a seat." Lin Dong, who was playing with a wisp of fire all along, suddenly raised his head and smiled kindly at the three-person. His gaze was fixated on the green-dressed teenage girl most of the time. His gaze contained a unique tinge of gentleness. This teenage girl reminded him of the lass back at home, Ching Tan. He wondered how she was doing now. Upon seeing Lin Dong opened his mouth, little Martin did not say anything else. Among the three of them, the wild-looking man was the most powerful. He was at most a 3 yuan nirvana stage practitioner, and could not pose any threat to them. Upon hearing these words, the three persons were clearly elated. After a slight hesitation, they walked toward the bonfire and sat orderly beside it. "My friend, my name is Suku. This is my sister, Suru." The wild-looking man cupped his fists toward Lin Dong and pointed to the green-dressed girl. Then, he pointed to the beautiful red-dressed girl. "This is our companion, Liu Ya." After the wild-looking man finished his introduction, he then scratched his head and continued, "We are from the Great Qing Empire, a middle-ranked empire, he." Upon hearing these words, Lin Dong was slightly happy. This fellow was rather simple-minded. By introducing himself, it meant that they were not dangerous. "I'm Lin Dong. These are my two brothers, Lin Yang and Lin Diao." Lin Dong laughed as he ignored little Martin, who was rolling his eyes furiously, and gave him a surname. After all, he could not introduce them to other people by calling them Little Flame and Little Martin. We are from the Great Yang Empire, a low-ranked empire. Upon hearing these, the Suku trio was stunned. An unbelievable look flashed across their eyes. It must be that they never expected the three mysterious individuals in front of them were from a low-ranked empire. Brother Lin Dong, you are really from a low-ranked empire. The teenage girl, whose name was Suru, could not help but ask while raising her big black eyes. When Lin Dong saw cute facial expression, he smiled slightly. After fighting with so many people in the ancient battlefield for nearly 1 year, he did not have a peaceful conversation with someone like now. Following which, he nodded his head and sliced a piece of meat from the roast meat in the bonfire and passed it to Suruo. Then, he laughed, "If you're not afraid of me poisoning you, eat some and fill your stomach." Hearing these words, Suru's face blushed. After thanking Lin Dong with a soft voice, she reached out her hand. At the moment when she reached out her hand to take the slice of meat, her fine fingers accidentally touched Lin Dong's hand. Upon that point of contact, Lin Dong's facial expression suddenly changed slightly. An indifferent little Martin, who was beside Lin Dong, squinted his eyes as if he sensed something as well. The glowing embers leaped and twirled, their faint red light illuminated Lin Dong's face, causing the shadows on his face to appear a little deeper. He merely glanced at Suru's immature and attractive face for a moment, before nonchalantly withdrawing his gaze. Though he appeared calm on the surface, Lin Dong was slightly troubled inside. In that split second he had come into contact with Suru's finger earlier, he had distinctly felt an extremely terrifying yuan power undulation within the girl's body. This undulation was much stronger than even his own and was extremely well hidden. Lin Dong was sure that the portion he had sensed was not in its entirety. That is to say, this girl, who looked about Qingtan's age, had a frightening power hidden within her body that even he could not match up to. Lin Dong's lips pursed slightly as his eyes involuntarily turned towards Suru, who was currently happily enjoying the roast meat in her hand with unconcealed glee on her face. He was somewhat unable to imagine that this adorable girl was a someone who could mask herself so well. Lin Dong casually offered the roast meat to the Suku duo before exchanging a look with little Martin. He knew that little Martin had astonishing senses, and would definitely have sensed something earlier. When little Martin saw Lin Dong's gaze, the former covertly nodded his head, indicating for Lin Dong to be a little more careful. Among the trio, the Suku duo were nothing to be worried about. However, this girl called Suru was someone even little Martin could not get a feel of. If her naiveness was merely an act, it would mean her acting skills were truly superb. Even someone with Lin Dong's character had manifested good feelings for her. Little Flame clearly did not know what the Lin Dong duo had discovered. However, given his understanding of the two, his keen senses told him something was up, and his oppressive figure immediately leaned slightly forward, like a vicious tiger that was about to pounce on its prey. "Thank you, big brother Lin Dong." Suru finished off the roast meat in her hand and wiped off the bit of oil on her tiny rosy lips, before blushing as she revealed a sweet smile to Lin Dong. Lin Dong faintly smiled in response, his gaze lowering to stare at the rising flames. After some silence and after the Suku duo had eaten their fill, Lin Dong slowly asked the trio, "Given younger sister Suru's strength, the demonic tide in the mountains shouldn't be much threat towards all of you, right?" As Lin Dong's words faded, the atmosphere practically froze in an instant. Suku stared at Lin Dong in shock, while Suru's pretty face paled as her body involuntarily shrunk backwards. Little Martin and Little Flame were momentarily stunned at their response, a little baffled inside. "What do you know?" Suku's expression fluctuated for a while before he suddenly stared at Lin Dong and asked. My mental energy cultivation is somewhat passable. Hence, I am able to sense the enormous power hidden within her body. I am not interested in where you come from, but I do not plan on being the target of someone else's scheme for no reason. In the ancient battlefield, you should understand my cautiousness. Lin Dong replied in an indifferent tone. You believe that we have a hidden agenda? The lady in red angrily said. Then what would you have us believe? Little Martin sarcastically replied. Who would not be on guard when a group of unknown origins suddenly approaches them at such a time? Even more so when one of them possesses a formidable strength, yet pretends to be a frail little girl. Suku's eyebrows tightly knitted together, his expression fluctuating. By his side, Suru still gave off a shy appearance, her huge eyes tinged with a little redness, as if she now understood that Lin Dong and the rest were suspicious of her. The fact that the three of you believe that we have a hidden motive is normal. Suku's expression finally ceased fluctuating, and helplessly said, as a bitter smile surfaced on his face. Brother Lin Dong's senses were indeed spot on. My little sister's body does indeed contain an extremely powerful strength. However, that power does not belong to her. Well, more accurately, it does not belong to her for the time being. Little sis is very talented, and she is the most outstanding in our great Qing Empire. However, her character is too weak. Truth be told, she is not suited to this place. Suku stroked Suru's tiny head, as he bitterly explained. Some time ago, we mistakenly entered an ancient territory. Originally, we were under the impression that we had came across some kind of treasure inheritance. However, in the end, we did not find anything at all. Of course, we did not leave completely empty-handed. Our only reward was little Ru unintentionally opening a seal, and drawing a long-lost power into her body. Lin Dong was dazed. Moments later, he regained his wits as his face involuntarily tightened for a second. He had struggled to the death, and endured so much pain, just to increase his strength a little. Yet, this Suru had unfathomably opened a seal and obtained an enormous power that even he would have trouble facing. Little Martin frowned as he stared at the shy Suru as if in thought. That power is both very mysterious and tremendous. Thus, we are completely unable to probe it while little Ru is also simply unable to control it. Of course, we know that this power is still considered something good. As long as this power stays with little Ru, she will eventually get used to it over time. Yet, who would have known that we would be targeted by some people after obtaining this power, leaving us no choice but to flee? What happened today was mostly due to us being chased to this place, and we definitely harbor no ill intentions towards you. Suku bitterly said. However, the three of you need not worry. We will not cause trouble for you, and we will leave immediately when the demonic tide retreats. As he observed the apologetic look on Suku's rough and wild face, Lin Dong once again looked towards the timid Suru, while the latter stared back with a slight trace of fear in her eyes. It was likely that she was scared by him earlier on. While being stared at by her in such a manner, Lin Dong could not help but release a pained laugh, as if he had done something wicked beyond redemption. Ha ha, it's all right. This guy is just too paranoid. He has been cheated too many times in the past and thus, he will become extremely sensitive whenever he encounters such a situation. The one who had suddenly spoke was little Martin, who had been somewhat in opposition of the Suku trio from the start. However, wide and extremely warm smile had now appeared on his handsome face. Lin Dong gazed at the brightly smiling little Martin, both angry and amused at the hat that little Martin had placed on his head. However, Lin Dong did not say anything. He understood little Martin's character extremely well. This fellow was crafty without equal, and would absolutely not do anything that was not beneficial. The fact that his attitude had shifted so rapidly meant that he must have discovered something. In response to the previously extremely cold yet now extremely welcoming little Martin, the Suku trio were caught off guard, and could only awkwardly look towards Lin Dong. They could tell that Lin Dong was the heart of this trio. If I was a little too paranoid earlier, and I have offended you in any way, please forgive me. Lin Dong clasped his hands together towards Suku and said. When faced with an enemy, Lin Dong could become rather vicious, but this did not mean that he was an unreasonable person. Brother Lin Dong is too polite. We are already very grateful for being able to avoid the demonic tide here. Suku hastily said. At this point, Suru clearly breathed a sigh of relief. She sat down beside Suku, but kept her distance from Lin Dong, her huge eyes sneaking a look before hastily shifting away. This little girl's attitude made Lin Dong feel a little happy. He had been stretched taut in this ancient battlefield for too long, and this was the first time he had seen a naive girl like Suru. If I am not mistaken, the enormous power that had suddenly appeared in her body should be a spirit emblem left behind by a powerful practitioner. This thing has its advantages and disadvantages. However, if it is truly able to be controlled, it can indeed allow one to reach the sky in a single step, but if it not, one's mind will be secretly invaded by the power within the spirit emblem and be completely taken over, like the turtle dove that occupies the magpie's nest. Little Martin suddenly remarked as he played with a wisp of fire. When his words sounded out, the Suku trio's expressions changed drastically. Evidently, they had never imagined that this kind of power would be so dangerous. I hope that this little miss will be able to control this power on her own. This can be said to be a gargantuan opportunity that others would seek, but never receive. After all, there is no free lunch in this world, everything comes with a price or a risk. Little Martin indifferent said. I will control this power. I will protect my brother and elder sis Liu Ya, so they will not have to continuing fleeing. Suru lowered her head and declared as she bit her lip. Lin Dong and little Martin were slightly stunned, obviously not expecting that this weak-natured girl would possess such inner strength. The night enveloped the land as the flame soared into the air, like a warm halo that wrapped around everyone and fended off the cold and gloomy darkness. As time passed, the darkness finally retreated. When a thread of light appeared in the horizon, the berserk yuan power of the land once again regained its calm. Brother Lin Dong, many thanks to the three of you for last night. We will not stay any longer, so farewell. Beside the dying embers, Suku gazed at the now bright sky as he sighed in relief before solemnly clasping his hands together towards Lin Dong. Without wasting any more time, he turned to leave. Big brother Lin Dong, big brother Lin Yang and big brother Lin Jiao, we are leaving, so please take care. Suru blushed as she waved her little hands at the Lin Dong trio. Her innocent appearance caused even the heartless little Martin to involuntarily shrug his shoulders. After the Suku trio left, the Lin Dong trio remained seated by the dying embers. For the time being, they showed no signs of leaving. They've been obstructed. Little Martin suddenly said from out of nowhere. Lin Dong gently nodded his head. That little girl's potential is not bad. If nurtured, her accomplishments will not be low in future. Such a good sapling, it's a pity if anything happens. Little Martin continued. Lin Dong rolled his eyes at little Martin, as he casually threw aside the wooden stick he was using to prod the soil. To one side, little Flame grabbed his black metal rod. Let's go. All along, the number of people we have offended is too many to count, but we have yet to save anyone out of kindness. This time, let's make an exception. Lin Dong stretched his back as he slowly stood up. On his face, a brilliant yet cold smile